Iron Head as well as Low Kick. So there's plenty more, I think, to go around when it comes down to the King Gambit on this side for Paul. But we aren't going to see it right away. For Paul, it is going to be the Incineroar and the Dragonite, which is actually going to end up, if it was an Intimidate, it would actually take that because it's multi-scale, but Corviknight and Garchomp on the other side.
Yeah, so one of the downsides of running the Life Orb Garchomp, of course, is that you are going to get intimidated. Clear Amulet often being used, but it's still really powerful. This is, of course, the Ground Terra variant as well. I think Corviknight might be the most important Pokemon for Justin in this matchup, actually. It doesn't take too much damage. The main thing that's going to threaten it is going to be the Flare Blitz from the opposing Incineroar. But Paul willing to just go for the Flying Terra immediately with Dragonite, looking to deal really powerful damage with that Terra Blast or that Low Kick.
It's nice, too, because if you were going to end up seeing a Stomping Tantrum, you've eliminated that. You are already a Flying type, but still. And you also are able to get away your weakness of something to the Dragon Claw. So we see the Terra Blast just go into the Garchomp, and it takes a really big amount of damage. With Corviknight being able to fire back a Brave Bird, that does actually take the Incineroar out of this game number 1, and that could be big.
Yeah, aggressive start immediately, but I think the prioritization on Incineroar is really important because Incineroar does pressure the Corviknight with that super effective Flare Blitz, right? So being able to eliminate that from the field immediately is a big deal. You've got Garchomp, you've got Dragonite on the field, but how are these two Pokemon actually dealing damage to Corviknight is the question, right? Now, Corviknight isn't going to do a ton in return, but it can set up that Tailwind Sled. Justin can then get a free switch into something that's waiting in the back. And so one of the questions I have already is how is Paul actually going to deal damage to the Corviknight? He might be contentious targeting around it for the next couple of turns and saying, you know what, you can stay on the field, you can click your Brave Birds, but it's not going to do that much damage to me.
Imagine if you roost and then you just hit it with a Stomping Tantrum.
Also true,
You can set up Tailwind if you want, and if your roost is faster, then I guess I'm just going to go ahead and hit you with a Stomping Tantrum when I can. But it's going to be the Earthquake first. So with the Terra flying in, of course, you've also, on the Dragonite, of course, it's going to be a Corviknight on the other side. Neither of them are going to be affected, but you've gotten that Garchomp out of there.
So I was wondering the speed interactions between the Garchomps and whether or not that was a potential speed tie, right? That's fairly common with Garchomps, and it's actually just going to be Low Kick here onto the Corviknight, gets a decent bit of damage. Brave Bird comes out and critically breaks that multi-scale on the Dragonite. We see what's in the back here. It's Pawmot, it's Typhlosion. Now, neither of these Pokemon love going up against Garchomp, right? Garchomp obviously will be able to deal super effective ground-type damage into both. Typhlosion also, of course, is going to be resisted by Garchomp. And so a Pawmot here is interesting, right? Because you do have that double shock, but let's say you bring Pawmot out immediately, you try to double shock into the Dragonite. Well, if you eat up a ground-type attack, suddenly you're in extreme speed range, right? So you can see Justin deciding, do I want to bring in Pawmot? Do I want to bring in Typhlosion? The fact that Paul can protect either Pokemon makes this a somewhat tricky decision.
Well, it is going to be the top Pawmot if you have to lock it in, otherwise you are going to start to run out of time. And maybe you just try to go for something like a Tailwind here. Yeah,
I think Tailwind is interesting. Pawmot's already really fast. It's got that Focus Sash as well. You could protect here with Pawmot. You could also consider just going for the, Fake Out. The thing is, if you go for Fake, I like Protect here the most because it baits out the Protect from the Dragonite on the opposing side. You've already gotten that Terra out. So is there a Terra from the Dragonite here? Or sorry, a Protect. No Protect. It's just going to be Extreme Speed. So Paul trying to snipe down the Pawmot probably with Extreme Speed plus a Earthquake. That's what we see. Pawmot's going to protect itself. Now, Corviknight isn't advancing the game state that much. Next turn, still the similar decision where the question is, okay, does the Dragonite protect or not?
Yeah, we would have loved to be able to get the Pawmot out of the way, but now that the Tailwind is set up, you are guaranteed to have this Pawmot be one of the fastest things on the field. And this Corviknight, you could go ahead and try to get some damage down onto this Garchomp. The biggest issue is that you are rough skin, and so you're going to be taking a little bit of damage from any contact move from the Corviknight or the Pawmot.
Ooh, it's the double up onto the Garchomp. And it's going to be Dragonite protecting. So did Garchomp protect as well? No, Garchomp's normally faster than Dragonite. Close combat goes into the Garchomp. We know Brave Bird's going into that slot as well. So a very, very nice play by Justin here.
It is super nice. You can see that the Rough Skin is able to break the Focus Sash here of the Pawmot, but with the Brave Bird double up, the Garchomp is out of there, and Paul would have loved to have this opportunity to try to get a knockout onto either one.
Yeah, and I'm curious what the final Pokemon is. I was thinking Alolan Ninetales was actually really good into this matchup, but Justin has that Hisuian Typhlosion in the back. So if it is Ninetales, it's going to be a little bit awkward right now. So Corviknight, of course, taking a little bit of recoil as well. Paul's final Pokemon's going to come out. It's actually going to be that King Gambit. Okay, so Ninetales not making an appearance in this one. Now there is that defense drop on Pawmot. You pressure Extreme Speed onto that slot.
Yeah, so but is the Extreme Speed actually going to be enough to deal with the Pawmot? Because I feel like that can always be a little bit tough. You do have the Hisuian Typhlosion in the back to potentially tank that just as a ghost type. But this can Gambit with the Assault Vest, it does a little bit better into the Hisuian Typhlosion attacks if you can actually whittle it down a little bit.
This is a big turn because I think you can extreme speed and go for a dark type attack like that Kowtow Cleave safely into Palm Mott. So the question is, yeah, there's that extreme speed. What did Paul do with that King Gambit? Because if it eats up that Kowtow Cleave, it will just feign. So Brave Bird, so much damage there onto the Dragonite. What did King Gambit go for here?
It's the Kowtow!
Yeah, but into who? It's going to be into the Corviknight, and Corviknight survives as well.
That's big. I mean, the Corviknight here in this slot, it does have access to go for something like the Protect, but it is certainly an extreme speed range. The fact that this Hisuian Typhlosion is on the field, that with the Choice Scarf in Tailwind, there's not a whole lot that's going to be able to stop this. You can Terrastalize, which is going to help get rid of your weakness to Sucker Punch, but you're still dishing out huge damage.
Yeah, I think, like, basically, Typhlosion feels pressure to Terra here, right? Now, then the Dragonite could capitalize off that by clicking extreme speed into that slot. You could double up onto the Typhlosion.
That might be enough, too.
Yeah, then it's interesting, right? Because, like, you have Palm Mott in the endgame, and Palm Mott here should be able to just knock out both Pokemon, so you want to prioritize KOing. Okay, yeah, I think this is really safe. I like this a lot. You just go for the Terra here. This means that extreme speed should not just get the one-hit knockout here immediately.
Well, I'm thinking if you go for Sucker Punch as well as extreme speed.
Yeah, you can cover for that. Corviknight then, however, will knock out Dragonite. I think Corviknight is so offensive in this matchup. So if you knock out Dragonite, you win the game, right? So yep, there's the E-Speed. It does go into the Typhlosion.
It's about 50%.
Yep.
And then the Sucker Punch to follow it up. Actually, that Typhlosion just gets knocked out. So, you know, maybe the Terrastalization, not enough to actually save it here, but you're right about the Corviknight being able to just get a huge KO onto this Dragonite.
Yep, it's all about just KOing Dragonite so that you get the Palm Mott back in and just play close combat into the King Gambit. So, you know, Justin saying, I should go for the Terra here, right? This basically covers for every option you can go for, other than, I think, maybe Protect with the Dragonite and then King Gambit going for, say, Kowtow Cleave. But the Corviknight here being able to hang on from so much damage was so critical. So Tailwind's over, but Palm Mott now just has that super effective close combat, and that will just easily knock out the King Gambit, and Sucker Punch should not KO Palm Mott here either.
No. I mean, yeah, no. I was like, is there a world where, like, maybe there's a crit? But no, Paul actually just goes ahead and tanks the close combat, hoping to, if some reason, actually fire off maybe like a Kowtow or anything in response. But Justin wins that game number 1 pretty cleanly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really good prioritization here. Justin made 2 very nice double ups, right? Doubling up into the Incineroar, saying, well, your Incineroar doesn't have Protect, right? And Paul opted to not even go for Fake Out. I think he might have been fishing for a Flare Blitz into the Corviknight slot to try to just get a lot of damage onto it immediately. Once again, I think Corviknight is really good into Paul's team. The only way you can hit it for super effective damage is that Flare Blitz. And Justin recognizing, how do I distribute enough damage here across the board to take advantage of the game state? You can see why Corviknight's so valuable as well, being able to bounce back that Intimidate from the Incineroar. And Corviknight's damage output in this game was no joke. It always did enough to basically pick up the knockouts that it needed to in this game.
And you know that you're able to get several of those Brave Birds off because you have that Citrus Berry recovery. So while you do take recoil, you get a little bit of your HP back. You have Roost if things are getting really rough. But yeah, this Corviknight was able to put on a ton of offensive pressure. I wonder, though, there was that turn where Paul did actually protect the Dragonite while there was a double up.
That was the big turn.
Yeah, does anything look different if Paul actually is able to get a knockout?
Yeah, you of course could have protected Garchomp there and attack with Palm Mott, attack with Dragonite into Palm Mott. Yeah, but it's like, well, then that just hard loses to Double Shock into the Dragonite slot, right? I think, like, Justin did a really good job of recognizing, okay, multi-skill Dragonite's annoying, but he baited out the Terra immediately, got the chip damage onto it, so then Palm Mott put on pressure with that Double Shock. So I think Justin's understanding in that game was really fascinating. I'm sure, you know, the fans at home definitely wanted to see the Weezing as well as the Toad Scroll, but I think you got to be a little bit scared when you see the Alolan Ninetales on the opposing side. Now, Ninetales did not come out in that game, so I'm wondering if Justin's thinking, okay, as a mix-up, what if I do bring it now? Because I don't think you're going to bring the Ninetales once again. But I think Corviknight just felt like such a solid piece for Justin in that game.
Now I wonder then if the Corviknight is there, do you actually think about the Ninetales?
It's interesting.
Which is hard, because I know you're not doing super effective damage, but like it's still something to think about. You've got the Blizzard spam, the Freeze Dry.
Right, like Ninetales actually into the Corviknight Garchomp lead would have been pretty awesome, right? Especially because it's Ground Terra Garchomp. So here it is, gonna be Dragonite and Garchomp dual dragons this time around. And here we go!
It's the Toad Scroll and the Weezing. Neutralizing Gas gonna shut off every ability.
Oh, but of course there's the Lumberry still on the Dragonite, right? So You can potentially go for that Spore. Water Terra here is pretty nice defensively, and Weezing right now does, of course, threaten with super effective damage onto both Pokemon, but you are up against a multi-skill Dragonite, right? And the Garchomp here, both Pokemon actually have Protect, so you could double Protect your one to bait out a Terra or bait out a potential and see what move Weezing wants to lock into.
That would be actually pretty stellar. I think if we ended up seeing that from Paul.
No stellar Terra, but it could be stellar.
Yeah, it could be a stellar play. You're right. But I kind of wonder too. Does Paul just read into that and go on the offense?
Okay, it looks like here we go. It's thinking of the Spore and just switch in. This is risky because now you of course
has its ability activated again.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And one thing to note is actually the multi-skill was actually canceled, right, by the Weezing. So Weezing actually did put on a little bit more offensive pressure into the Dragonite. Still, though, Dragonite's quite bulky, and it can Terra. It's going to be the Flying Terra here, so is it just Terra Blast into Toedscruel? And if so, do you just get the knockout with that?
I think you would end up just getting the knockout. Regardless, you also have the double-up opportunity here from the Garchomp, but it is going to Protect. It feels the threat of that Toedscruel, also just the damage that could be coming out from that Weezing. If the Toedscruel goes for the Spore into the Protect, so Paul got a really good call there. But what is this Dragonite going to actually do? It is the Terra Blast. So it has two options, and it is going to be that Toedscruel on the receiving end.
And that just faints. Bye-bye, Toedscruel. You tried your best.
Well, we got to see it. We just didn't get a chance to see it do something there. But now you have the opportunity, I guess, to bring in the Garchomp. You still get a chance to put on some pressure on the opposing, but we saw the speed interactions in that last game.
Totally, yeah. And I think, yeah, the Toedscruel on this team, speedier, right, as we see the Dragonite move there. Garchomp is just going to Protect. So once again, like, Corviknight is such a big problem here. Paul, however, does just have a Pokemon lead immediately, just willing to launch Dragon Claw into that Garchomp. I wouldn't be surprised if he doubled into it, but this, of course, then is an opportunity for Justin to set up a potential Tailwind. Low Kick, though, actually decent damage to Corviknight, right? You need to slowly start chipping away at it, so I like the idea of just splitting your damage here, get some guaranteed damage, but now you're at risk of obviously eating up a Dragon Claw from this Garchomp onto the opposing side.
Is there anything that, I mean, like, when I look at Paul's Pokemon, it's tough because if you bring the King Gambit again, then you also could just take a Stomping Tantrum in that spot, or you just end up taking some damage from both the Garchomp and the Corviknight from a double up. But there is still this Weezing in the back that Justin can consider throwing back into the mix.
Yeah, and I think the main thing right now is you still have to break the multi-skill on the Dragonite. Of course, you could potentially pivot in the Weezing with that neutralizing gas, but either way, with the Flying Terra, like, you're just not going to be able to do like a ton of damage. But Garchomp is going to pivot out here, so the idea is reading that Paul's Garchomp is going to go for a Protect or a Switch and trying to get Weezing into a good offensive position. Neutralizing gas now hits the field as well. But Garchomp does not Protect. It's willing to just attack. So Brave Bird goes into the Garchomp. This is a fair bit of recoil damage coming out. And now Earthquake comes out into the Weezing slot. Paul doesn't care about eating up a Dragon Claw, and Weezing just eats up so much damage.
It was nice because at least like the neutralizing gas was shutting off the rough skin. So you're only taking the recoil from the Brave Bird, but it does leave this Weezing vulnerable to that double up of the Terra Blast. And so Weezing also gets a chance to show up to this game number 2, but not a chance to show off.
Yeah, we can see that Justin now, it feels like it's Paul this time who's making these really aggressive predictions, right? Paul is a player who is so good at VGC because he can go from playing safe to playing really aggressive just with the snap of a finger. So huge lead from Paul in this game, and multi-skill still hasn't even been broken. Justin's been trying to read into Paul's safe protects, which he was going for in that first game. Paul decides, you know what, I'm just going to dial up the aggression a little bit, and it's been paying off really well. Now, there's still comeback potential, right? This Corviknight, of course, can heal itself with Roost. You still have the Tailwind up. You've still got the Dragon Claw pressure. But the question is, do you think Paul continues to play aggressive with Garchomp? Does he finally go for a Protect with it? And the Dragonite, it just can freely launch Terra Blast into Garchomp, which I think is what makes this so tough.
It does, and Paul still has 2 more Pokemon in the back that you could also switch into that Garchomp's place or the Dragonites. And so it's certainly an uphill battle for Justin to have to climb. With the Earthquake also from the Garchomp, you get to do a little bit here to the Garchomp. It actually is enough to
get the KO with the Life Orb.
Yeah, so that does leave this Dragonite right now by itself, but with the Brave Bird, like, now you get a chance to actually break the multi-scale, but Paul still gets a free switch into something else and gets to go for the Terra Blast into one of these Pokemon.
This Dragonite set is just so strong. Like, it's been content to just click Terra Blast the whole game. Dragonites definitely look like one of the strongest Pokemon in the format. from all the different stream games today. And so King Gambit now hits the field. You have Sucker Punch pressure now onto the Garchomp, so you can just Sucker Punch, low kick the Corviknight, and we should see Paul take this second game. I think you have the Terra here on Justin's end, but I don't see how Terra really saves you at this point, because the Garchomp is always just going to feint to a Sucker Punch, I think, unless somehow it has enough bulk to actually take one. If you can survive, even then, I don't know. It's like Corviknight's just never really winning the game from this position, because Brave Bird is not going to ever win against King Gambit, so all Paul needs to do is eliminate Garchomp. So I think we should see us go to a third game here, but Justin's going to fight it out, take some time to think about how he can come up with a game plan, and yeah, Sucker Punch does just get the knockout on a Garchomp.
Yeah, I mean, this Dragonite is a problem. Like, even putting it to sleep, you have the Lumberry that would be able to keep this Dragonite back on its feet. The low kick now, too, is going to do even more damage because you removed your flying type with the Roost. Yeah, I think you just have to go back to the drawing board for this third game. Justin was able to get the win in game number 1. Paul with some fantastic calls, being able to draw this to a game number 3, but now Justin has to kind of consider, was the Toad Squirrel and Weezing worth it?
Yeah, I think like Justin did not end up going for Terra in that game, so there was the opportunity to at least go for Water Terra with Toad Squirrel on turn 1 to survive the turn. Either way, right, we saw where the Spore target ended up going into, but yeah, I think Dragonite was just an absolute menace here, and I think Justin was trying to catch Paul off guard, predicting a Protect or a Switch, but Paul was like, you know what, I can just attack here. I don't actually think that I'm really feeling that threat in. Palm Mott critically being dropped meant that the best answer into the Flying Terra Dragonite was just eliminated. So I think Justin might want to consider going back to that Palm Mott. I do think one really interesting interaction in this game is what you called out earlier, Rose, the Rough Skin breaking the Focus Sash on Palm Mott, because I think Palm Mott's an incredible Pokemon here, but it's really volatile. If you, once again, attack into a Protect and then you just eat up like a Stomping Tantrum, well, suddenly you're in Extreme Speed KO range, right? So yeah, I think Dragonite once again continues to be so good for Paul here.
I think Paul is also very content to just keep leading Dragonite Garchomp.
Yeah.
Because that is really the big check to the Palm Mott, even if it's not the Rough Skin, it's the damage duo that you just called out, being able to take it out, and then what is actually stopping this terrifying Dragonite? You can't hit it with Garchomp on your side, because you've got Earthquake and Stomping Tantrum, which the Dragonite would be immune to, and even with the Toad Squirrel, you've got Earth Power, which isn't going to be able to touch it either.
Yeah, to me, I think like the way Justin approached game 1 felt really smart, where it's like, okay, let me use Corviknight, let me Brave Bird into the Dragonite. Being able to bait out the Terra is really nice, right? I think Corviknight Garchomp just was a fairly effective lead. I wonder if Justin was thinking Paul was going to adjust to Ninetales in game 2. I guess even if Ninetales came out, like, you're still pressuring Freeze Dry, so not 100% sure, but either way, I think, like, I would love to see Ninetales make an appearance here. I don't think it will, but it would be cool, because let's say you expect Corviknight and Garchomp to come back out as the lead. Suddenly, a Ninetales applies a lot of offensive pressure. But yeah, I think basically in that game, Corviknight stood on the field, but its partners weren't able to do any damage.
How do you feel about a Typhlosion lead?
Okay.
I'm just wondering, because at least you're able to do like at least some type of spread damage. Heat would still be a lot. You maybe get a chance to get a burn onto either side. Unfortunately, that's not going to end up being the case in this game number 3, but it was a pipe dream like the Alolan Ninetales.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think if you actually expect a Ninetales adjustment, maybe you could think about it, but the downside of it is that you're just facing down Double Dragon, right? And that was the lead that we had previously seen. So this time around, it's going to be a double Protect from Justin's end. Paul, of course, critically doesn't go for that Flying Terra immediately, but now you have a lot of offensive pressure right away. It might just be a Protect all around.
Across the board. A Protect for you and you, and it is just 4 Protects. But that 4th one is going to fail. It makes sense, though, from Paul's side as well, where you don't necessarily want to be a victim to a fake out from this Palm Mott. Maybe your Dragonite does just go down because it's multi-scale. It does have the opportunity to get faked out.
This is so interesting. Okay, you're seeing the Weezing pivot. The idea is I've got Life Orb, Dragon Claw. Let me turn off multi-scale and then maybe just knock out the Dragonite. Now, critically, Dragonite didn't get its Protect off last turn. Oh, okay.
That is spicy.
Electric Terra plus Dragon Claw here into Dragonite is certainly a possible play. But if Paul... Okay, the idea is to split the damage here. Yeah. I like it. I was going to say, if you like double up onto the Dragonite and then Dragonite does get the Protect off and Earthquake comes out, it's a disaster. But this is one really fun thing you can do with Palm Mott. Electric Terra, which means that you will keep your typing with the Double Shock.
That would be very nice, but you're still under pressure because the extreme speed is going to be enough to break the Palmot. And because Paul's Garchomp is very fast, we could see just a knockout here, but not before this Palmot gets a chance to actually go for the double shock. But look at the multi-scale.
Is it a speed tie? Whose Garchomp will move first right now? It's going to be Earthquake from the opposing side.
So Paul is going to be able to get damage down into both the Palmot and the Garchomp. So the Palmot gets knocked out here. Garchomp from Justin's and still gets to move, and we saw the damage split. So this should be a good sizable amount of damage into Paul's Garchomp with the Dragon Claw.
I think it'll KO, yeah. So this is a Garchomp versus Garchomp. I'm really questioning like the speeds here, right? If it were a speed tie, this would look completely differently if Justin had won that one. But now Justin is down a Terra for the remainder of the game. Palmot was the best tool against this against the Dragonite previously, and so yeah, that's a really, really strong start for Paul there. But at the Garchomp speed interaction, a huge deal.
Well, because what would have happened if Justin actually switched the Weezing into that Garchomp slot? You shut off the multi-scale and then you just go for the double shock?
Yeah.
It's a tough call to have to make when you know that Paul is able to make these aggressive reads.
Ninetales hits the field!
That's a really big adjustment there from Paul. We didn't see it in games 1 or 2.
So Ninetales, of course, will not have the snow active, but it still puts on offensive pressure, right? Right now, you have the ability to just go for, say, Freeze Dry into that slot, go for Terra with your Dragonite, and just Terra Blast into the Weezing slot. So Justin recognizes, okay, I do not want my Garchomp to just faint from a Freeze Dry. Let me bring out Corviknight.
Corviknight's going to take that a lot better with its Steel typing, but we are going to see a Terastallization invested into this turn here from Paul. It is going to be the Dragonite, again, 3 for 3 on this Terra Flying. Knowing that this is one way that you can really bypass these ground type attacks from the Garchomp.
Totally, with Palmot eliminated now, way less threatening. Yep, there is the safe Freeze Dry into the Garchomp slot. That does around a quarter to Corviknight, and Terra Blast comes out immediately into the Weezing slot. So I don't expect this to KO, but it'll certainly do a ton of damage.
It is a lot. If any follow-up here would be great. You've got the Dazzling Gleam too, using that Flying Terra just as a defensive one. And this Alolan Ninetales has been able to stay around quite healthy.
Yeah, so what's tough here is you want to set up Tailwind, but like the Weezing slot right now is just completely exposed, right? So Paul has a guaranteed knockout onto that with Terra Blast if you want to go for it. Corviknight could then, of course, Brave Bird and pick up a knockout onto the Dragon. I'm curious, because the Corviknight seems fairly offensive, whether or not it would even knock out the Alolan Ninetales. One other thing to think about is if the Dragonite can knock out the Weezing, then the Snow suddenly becomes active, and then you actually get that defense boost. And so, yeah, it's tough because the Weezing slot basically will go down this turn, right? You either lose your Weezing or you switch in your Garchomp. So the main decision, I think, is, yeah, what do you want to do with the Corviknight right now? Do you want to go for Brave Bird to finish off the Dragonite? And that looks like that's what Justin's considering.
Oh, Freeze Dry goes first, though, into the Corviknight. You just do a little bit more chip as the Dragonite gets to follow that up next. So this Terra Blast into the Weezing, poor thing. It's also going to go down here, and then you also get that Snow back up, as you said, as these abilities turn back on.
Yep, Neutralizing Gas now wears off. Snow Warning is now active. And so the Brave Bird, of course, went into the Dragonite slot. That'll pick up the knockout. But you've still got a Ninetales that can deal with the Garchomp, right? So then the big question is, what is Paul's final Pokemon? If it's that King Gambit, you can just always Sucker Punch into the Garchomp slot and lock the game up, kind of like how the previous game was locked up.
But you took so much recoil there as well. Yes, you are able to get this Citrus, which is going to give you more of your HP back, but now that the Snow is also active, this Ninetales is Blizzard.
What's the final Pokemon? That is King Gambit, and I think that should secure the win here for Justin. You can very safely go for that Blizzard and Kowtow Cleave into the Corviknight slot. No need to even really, unless the Ninetales for some reason is slower than the Garchomp, which I would be surprised by. But I think one of the reasons you would want to use Ninetales is because it's faster. So yeah, I think Justin here can try to go for maybe a Protect and a Tailwind. It's probably your best bet, but the King Gambit is the perfect final Pokemon for Paul here.
Yeah, you still maybe have a little bit of dog left in this fight here if you're Justin, but as we see the Protect come through, it comes down to Paul being able to even just get a double up into this Corviknight slot, finish it off. There's the Blizzard, of course not going to be able to connect with this Garchomp, but look at how much that Corviknight's even going to take care of
the freeze
as well.
Finally comes out.
So even if it was going to be able to get the Tailwind off, it's certainly not going to be able to this time around, as it's just frozen in place.
Yeah, that one honestly I don't think makes a difference because, I mean, you see Corviknight faints here, Garchomp protected, you just Sucker Punch, Freeze Dry into the Garchomp Slaughter Blizzard.
But it's still insult to injury, Aaron.
It's a testament to why Alolan Ninetales is really powerful though, right? Like Paul clicked Freeze Dry, and Blizzard, and your odds of getting a freeze when you're going for these moves turn after turn after turn is fairly high. So Paul Chua advances to 7-0 with that Alolan Ninetales, our first time seeing it on stream in this tournament, defeating Justin Carris, running the Toadsproul, running the Weezing. We got to see, unfortunately, those two Pokemon not do very much in this matchup, and I think Paul